What we're looking at here is not a passenger jet. This is, in fact, a Voyager, the largest aircraft in the British Royal Air Force, which is designed to carry out mid-air refueling. Using a mixture of technology and incredible skill, Voyager allows the RAF to carry out some of its most daring and dangerous missions. But how exactly does this mid-air miracle work? We're going to go on board, see the refueling for ourselves, and speak to a pilot to find out. This is RAF Voyager. If it looks a little bit like a passenger jet, that's because it is. It starts life as an Airbus A330-200, but is then specially adapted for life in the military. The main difference between the commercial version and the military version are these pods underneath its wings, which are called refueling points. There's one pod under each wing, and on some Voyagers there's a third on the belly of the aircraft. Inside each pod is a long coil of rubber hose, and on the end of each hose is something called a drogue. This is about the width of a manhole cover and kind of looks like the top of a shuttlecock or a miniature parachute. We'll cover exactly what these are for and how they work in just a moment. The refueling points connect via the jet's wings to its fuel tanks, of which there are 6. There's 3 main tanks, one in the center of the aircraft, and then the left inner and right inner, which are stored inside each wing. Then there's 3 smaller tanks, the right outer and left outer, which are towards the tips of the wings, and the trim tank, which is in the tail. In total, the Voyager can carry up to 110 tons of fuel, 33 tons in each of the main tanks, and then the remaining 11 tons split between each of the smaller tanks. In aerial refueling, fuel is measured by weight rather than by volume, such as gallons or liters, because the volume will change depending on the density of the air in which it's flying. Measuring by weight is more precise, and precision is paramount unless you want jets to start falling from the sky. Each Voyager is also fitted with 6 pumps, which you won't find on civilian aircraft. These are responsible for getting the fuel from the tanks, through the hoses, and out the other end. There's 2 for the left, 2 for the right, and 2 for the center. Other major difference is here inside the cockpit. As well as seats for the pilot and co-pilot who fly the Voyager, there's a third workstation just behind them here. This is for the mission system operator, the person who actually does the refueling. We'll get to see this control panel in more detail later. For now, all you need to know is it has a bunch of screens covered with useful information. Otherwise, the inside of the Voyager will be familiar to anyone who has ever caught a flight on holiday. There's rows of seats, like you'd expect to find on any civilian jet, though fewer of them. The A330 is rated up to 375 seats, but Voyagers have only 291, giving every passenger the equivalent of premium economy. Sounds fancy. But really, it's so that soldiers can easily fit into the seats with all of their gear. When it's not refueling, Voyager doubles up as a transport aircraft, flying soldiers from their bases to wherever the action is, though not directly to the front lines. The seats can also be removed to allow Voyager to transport casualties away from the front lines. Up to 40 stretchers, plus 3 critical care patients can be put into the aircraft. If we go back to the tapes, then we can see all of that up close and in person. I'll keep this short and sweet so we can get to the much cooler aircraft refueling. This may at first appear to be an ordinary passenger aircraft. In fact, this is an RAF Voyager, a mid-air refueling aircraft. What we're about to see is it refuel fighter jets over the north coast of Australia from the British Carrier Strike Group. Let's go. Here's what the Voyager looks like from the outside. You can see it basically resembles the kind of aircraft you'd get on to go on your holidays. And when you get inside, things don't change all that much either. It's only when you look underneath the wings that you start to see the differences. Here's those refueling points I told you about. And check this out, the refueling hoses being taken out with those drogue baskets on the end. And up here in the cockpit, you can see the mission system operator's station. Here's the screens he or she uses to coordinate the mission. There's cameras showing the back of the aircraft and gauges for each fuel tank. But again, more of that later. Let's move swiftly onto the action and take a look at how aerial refueling actually works. To refuel a fighter jet, the Voyager will extend the hoses coiled in its refueling points so they're trailing behind the aircraft. This is where the drogues come in. They provide additional drag so the hoses aren't flapping everywhere. Next, the friendly jets will form up on one side of the aircraft. The pilot of the Voyager will talk to the jet pilots so they can carefully synchronize their movements. All of the aircraft need to be going the exact same speed and turn exactly at the same time so they don't put each other in danger. Once everyone is synced up, the pilot will pass control to the mission officer sitting behind him, who will order one of the jets to cross over to the other side of the Voyager. When they get there, their job is to very carefully insert a probe sticking out the front of their jet into the end of the hose. This is the drogue's other job. Its funnel shape makes the target slightly easier to hit. Once a successful connection is made, valves in the end of the hose and the tip of the probe open up, allowing fuel to begin pumping. The mission officer will calculate exactly how much fuel to give and then hit a button to begin pumping it across to the jet. This is where synchronization is critical. To keep the fuel flowing, the Voyager's hose and the fighter jet's probe must stay perfectly aligned. They must turn at the same time, speed up at the same time, and slow down at the same time. The most dangerous thing is turbulence. This could throw the delicate alignment off, damaging the drogue or the probe and potentially ruining the whole mission. Provided this doesn't happen and all the fuel is dispensed correctly, the fighter will then form up on the side of the aircraft it just took fuel from. This allows the next jet to come across and repeat the process. Once all the jets have taken their fuel, they'll speak to the Voyager pilot to confirm mission complete and will then break away. I should say that the jets don't have to cross from one side of the Voyager to the other. This is just helpful in a training scenario to keep track of who's had fuel and who hasn't. In action, the Voyager can fuel jets simultaneously from both wings without any need to swap positions. If the Voyager is refueling a heavier aircraft, say an A400 transport plane, then the exact same process will play out, except this time, the A400 will line up directly behind the Voyager and take fuel from the center hose rather than under the wings. This is because it's thirstier than the fighters. It has larger tanks, takes more fuel, and the center hose has the best flow rate. Now, for what I really wanted to show you. There's two kinds of aircraft here. The F-35B, an ultra-modern 5th-generation fighter bomber being flown by the US Marines, and the slightly older but no less impressive FA-18F Super Hornet of the Royal Australian Air Force. They're lining up on one side of the Voyager, ready to cross over and take fuel from the other side. You can actually see the fuel probe on the FA-18 pop out just here. The jets then move across and carry out the tricky task of trying to connect the probe and the drogue. As you can see, this doesn't always go to plan. Fortunately, neither the probe nor the drogue were damaged, allowing the pilot to go around and try again. This time, success. Once the pilot has taken enough fuel, he forms up on the same side of the Voyager, allowing the next pilot to come in. That process repeats until every jet is fully fueled up. Here you can see two FA-18s alongside, waiting for their third wingman to finish. And then all three peel away from the aircraft. Now, here's that exact same process with the F-35. You can see the jet flying alongside, perfectly synchronizing his turn with the Voyager. The pilot then crosses over for his chance to take fuel. Again, not everything goes perfectly. These pilots are highly skilled, but this is tricky to master. Second time is a success, and the fuel starts flowing. It's a surreal experience, walking through a passenger plane and seeing this out the window. Once the refueling is complete, the F-35 breaks off and flies away. So, if air-to-air refueling is so difficult and potentially dangerous, why bother doing it? Well, because it has huge tactical advantages to anyone who can pull it off. Aircraft are some of the most powerful weapons of war ever created. Unlike ships and soldiers, they're not constrained by geography and can simply fly over defenses. They can go virtually anywhere they like and attack whatever they like. The only serious limitation on the power of air power is its range, where it can get to and back from using a single tank of fuel. Remember that A400M transport plane we mentioned earlier? Well, here's its maximum range, carrying a 30-ton load without aerial refueling. Impressive, but not extraordinary. Unless the mission involves carrying supplies to Europe or North Africa, getting home again is going to be touch and go. Now, here's a map of where a British A400M managed to fly with aerial refueling. That's basically half the planet. 7,000 miles, 22 hours in the air, 0 stops along the way. During the flight, it was refueled 3 times. Once here, over the Atlantic, by a Voyager which took off from Brize Norton, and then twice more here and here, by Voyagers which took off from Eielson Air Base here in Alaska. It also set the record for the longest flight ever by an A400M. In practical terms, what that means is the range of aircraft becomes virtually limitless. No matter how far away an enemy is, they can be hit. An extremely powerful tool to have. Let me give you a couple of examples. First, Operation Black Buck, 5 bombing raids the British carried out against Argentina during the Falklands War. Each raid involved 2 Avro Vulcan bombers and 11 Victor tankers taking off from Ascension Island here in the middle of nowhere. The aim was to fly 3,500 miles to the Falklands, bomb the airport of Port Stanley, and make it back again. On the outward leg alone, the jets refueled 14 times in the air. 7 tankers gave fuel to one of the Vulcans. The other was just a reserve that turned back soon into the mission. And 7 times the tankers refueled each other, dropping away one by one until it was just the bomber left. Then, on the way back, the Vulcan was refueled once more, before landing back on Ascension 16 hours after taking off, having stayed in the air the whole time. These raids were the longest range bombing runs in history at the time. And while they didn't do much damage, they did prove the usefulness of air-to-air refueling technology. They were certainly a nasty surprise to the Argentines, whose whole strategy was based upon the Falklands being too far away for the British to take back. And they paved the way for much longer and more daring missions in the future, such as during Operation Enduring Freedom, the start of America's War on Terror. One of these missions, flown by the Spirit of America, a B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, involved flying continuously for more than 18,000 miles with 44 hours and 20 minutes in the air. Taking off from Missouri, the bomber headed across the Pacific to Diego Garcia, turned north for Afghanistan, dropped 20 tons of bombs, then flew back to the island where it landed. Along the way, it was refueled 5 times at California, Hawaii, Guam, the Strait of Malacca, and Diego Garcia. Also, the Afghans would never see it coming. That is the true power of aerial refueling. While on board the Voyager, we got a chance to speak with a pilot who explains some of the things we've already mentioned in a bit more detail. First, I asked Lieutenant Reynolds to walk us through the cockpit and tell us a little bit about the differences between a civilian A330 and a military Voyager.
Well, we'll start up there. This is where our autopilot panel is. Notably, a lot of our flying is done through the autopilot, and there are kind of 2 modes we can do. We can ask the computer to tell the autopilot what to do, or we can just go in directly and tell the autopilot what we want to happen. So up here, this is called our FCU, our flight control unit, and we've got our speed, our heading we want, our altitude, and how fast we actually want to go up and down. But notably on this aircraft, we also have the BAM, which gives us a set angle of bank, which is useful for when we're doing our air-to-air refueling tracks. We can just set a certain degree of angle of bank, and that gives a nice reliable turn for the receivers to stick to and formate on. If we look up here to our top panel, we've got some extra air-to-air refueling pumps. So the normal A330 doesn't have all of these pumps. We've got our air-to-air refueling pumps. So we've got pumps 1 and 2 will come out of our centre tank, and they'll do a lot of the fuselage refueling unit. We've got pumps 3 and 4 from the left pod, and pumps 5 and 6 for the right pod.
So moving on, is there anything else different up here?
Up here, not so much. I guess the next interesting thing to show you would be our OIT, which is kind of our computer / camera system that we have. On a normal A330, this would just be a pull-out desk, but on here you can obviously see we've got the cameras that we can scroll through to monitor how the fast jet receivers are moving around the aircraft, and that's really important to maintain SA instead of just looking out of the window.
Just very quickly, what does SA stand for?
Well, that's situational awareness. So in terms of how many jets we get around the aircraft, maintaining SA spatially and in terms of time is really important when you're doing air-to-air refueling, and that really boosts how we can improve our SA. It also allows us to have fewer crew members on board an air-to-air refueling task compared to some of our coalition aircraft, where they'll have people looking out of windows on radios, which is also a good system, but this allows us to fly with less people and give us instant SA as opposed to down the radio. On here as well, it also gives us our computer, which can give us a moving map and also some SA on some of the other players that might be in the battle space as well. So in terms of, again, spatial awareness and battle space awareness, this also can improve that for us.
Next, we took a closer look at the screens behind the pilots.
This is our MSO station, our Mission System Operator station, and as you've identified, it is facing the other way, so they do need to be pretty sharp with their left and rights, because obviously all reversed. And on this, you can see a reflection of what we see up the front, but instead of having to scroll through, they've got their full panoramic, so they can see the see the receivers when they move from an echelon left position and they need to go to the hose on the right hand side. They can see them go all the way across and again just maintain that instantaneous SA the whole time.
So talk to us a little bit about that, because we saw that happening while we were doing the aerial refueling. We were kind of running from one side of the aircraft to the other to catch it happening. What are they doing there and why are they doing it?
So air-to-air refueling is conducted in a very safe and methodical manner. All the receivers, if they're fast jets, will appear on the left side of the aircraft in an echelon left position, which is
the right-hand side.
correct.
As we're looking at it.
So it is labelled our left panoramic. So as we're looking, it'll be the right screen, but it's on the left of the aircraft. So that they'll come up and formate in an echelon left position. Once they're there, I'll hand over control to the MSO for them to move the receivers into an astern position behind the hose. Once they're there and they're stable, the MSO will give them clear contact. They'll plug the hose, take the fuel they need, and then once they have had their allotted amount of fuel, they'll back out. And from there, the MSO will then move them to the echelon right position, and from there I will then clear the aircraft to depart in a safe manner in accordance with what I've conducted a negotiation with C2, which is our command and control. So you did ask how many cameras there are on the aircraft. So we've got the 1, 2, 3 here, but there's also 2 inspection cameras that are able to move and also zoom in and zoom out. So you saw the baskets on the end of the hoses. Now sometimes those baskets do get damaged by the receivers, especially when we encounter some turbulence. That can get really, really difficult for the receivers, and sometimes they might damage the baskets, and we need to be able to ascertain if that basket is damaged and if it's still flying correctly. So those movable cameras, our inspection cameras, allow us to really zoom in and inspect those baskets to ensure we can continue safe air-to-air refueling.
And those cameras are located under the wings?
Yeah, you're not quite under the wings. They're under the main fuselage, and they're in their own bubble, so they can have full movement. There's a daytime one where you'll see the daytime picture, but all of these also have infrared imagery as well for at night. Instead of lighting them up with a big spotlight, that wouldn't be very tactically helpful for the fast jets. So we have infrared cameras that can also see them at night. So alongside all the cameras you see here, it's all fully electronic in terms of the calculations and the offloads that the MSOs will coordinate with us and the receivers. So they're able to, in their system, dial up which receiver, how much they're going to take, in which order, and also in which units the fuel is going to be dished out in. Obviously for our Typhoons, they're European, so we work in kilograms and tons. But for any American-made aircraft like our F-35s, they work in kilopounds. So they're also able to switch between the two, save us doing the maths. So what you're looking at here is the sum of our tanks of fuel that we have. So we've got the left outer tank, the left inner tank, the centre tank, the right inner tank, the right outer tank, and we've also got our trim tank here. And that's pretty universal across the A330 fleet. We are able to carry up to 110 tonnes, that's 110,000 kilograms of fuel. That's our maximum. We don't often get there, but we can store 33 tonnes in the left inner, 33 tonnes in the centre, and 33 tonnes in the right inner, and then the rest is distributed across the other fuel tanks as we need. I spoke to you about the fuel pumps that we looked up over there earlier, and you can see that these fuel pumps are not on, so they're in orange, but you've got the 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, 6 fuel pumps that are additional for air-to-air refueling.
Fantastic. And if the maximum amount of fuel you can carry, how many aircraft could you refuel off of that?
So with 110 tonnes, it depends on 2 things. It depends on how long we're up for. We're obviously burning a certain amount of fuel as we go, and it also depends on how many receivers we have as well. If we get a busy dot sheet in the UK, and our dot sheet is our daily order of tasking, if we get a full stack of aircraft there, we could be up for a good 4 hours but still give most of our fuel away. I think the record that I currently have, I don't think it's the record on the Voyager Force, is 66.7 tonnes, so we're giving well over half of our gas away during a sortie in the UK.
And how many aircraft were getting gas off of that mission, do you know?
So it is often the same aircraft getting many plugs.
Refueling multiple times.
Yeah, it is. But that could be upwards of 8 aircraft, 8 separate aircraft.
Wow.
Yeah.
Given how far aircraft that are being fueled mid-air can fly, I was curious about the longest mission Lieutenant Reynolds has ever flown.
I think for myself, we were delivering the replacement Typhoons down to the Falklands from Ascension. So we did a trail of the 3 Typhoons down there, and I think we were up for, must have been close to 8 hours. So we did the first leg of 3 legs of refueling on that, and we were up for a good close to 8 hours refueling the 3 Typhoons for 3 times. So that's a total of 3, and then also refueling the A330 that was providing the search and air asset if anything were to go wrong for that mission.
And then another Voyager would have taken off, flown the same route, and then done the 3 on the way back.
So correct, we did have another Voyager taking off from Ascension, and at a predestined place and at a predestined time, the 3 Typhoons that we'd given all of our allotted gas to were then able to sidestep to that second Voyager somewhere over the South Atlantic, and it does bring back some kind of memories of the black box missions when you do missions like that, because it is projecting air power at range in a coordinated and professional manner. I mean, I know those guys had a vastly different mission to what we had, but being in the same piece of air, doing the same kind of mission, does feel like you're taking your little place in RAF history with those missions.
Talk us through, I mean, it might seem obvious, but talk us through the role of a mid-air refueler. For countries that have the ability to refuel mid-air, what does that give them the ability to do?
Sure, so we're defined as a HAVA, a high value air asset, and that's because we enable reach to the fighters. The fighters have only so much fuel that they can take on any mission, and to increase the range and also endurance of that fighter over an operational airspace, you're going to need more fuel. So if you take the air refueling with you, it allows that asset to stay on station or to get further for its particular mission.
Fantastic. And one question that we were actually asking ourselves back there is, generally speaking, do the mid-air refueling aircraft take off with the fighters from whatever base they're going from and travel with them and refuel them on the way, or would the Voyager take off from, say, another airfield mid-route and join them?
So not necessarily. Often in the UK, we are taking off from Bryce Norton and we're heading out over the North Sea for our training, and we'll be joined by Typhoons and Lightnings that have come from Lossiemouth, from Marham and from Coningsby. Today, for example, we took off and we were joined by the US Marine Corps F-35 Bravos out of Darwin, but we were joined in the operational airspace by 2 Australian Growlers and F-18s in our operational airspace. So they had come from a different area, they'd formated onto us, taken fuel, and then we'd also split the formation, so they'd headed back to their air station, which was Tyndall, and whilst we returned home here.
That's where this tape stops, but we'll be back soon to play you through another episode of War on Tape. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you want more videos like this in your feed, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.